Welcome, everyone. It's Alicia too, with my fabulous co-host Tori Kravitz, and we are thrilled to be back on She's with the Band. We both literally called one another geeking out when this interview was confirmed because our guest today is an icon. She's an entrepreneur, makeup guru, rad vocalist, children's book author, and tattooing legend. Welcome, Kat Von D, to the show.
Hey guys.
Hi. How
Such
are
a
you?
handful of accolades. What amazing. Yeah, how are you?
Making me blush over here. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, well, we were chatting today, of course, as Alicia mentioned about this interview for today. And I told her a little narrative. She was like, well, now you're going to have to tell Kat this when we're all together. So just to give you a little disclaimer, I mean, of course, Alicia and I being around the age that we are, we've kind of watched you blossom in your career and always, loved watching you from afar and the inspiration that you've had to us. And both of us doing interviews for over a decade. I used to travel quite often to Los Angeles, and my mom and I would do interviews together over there, where the showbiz is. And and the first time that I flew there, first thing off the plane, I can't make this up, I went straight to High Voltage Tattoo. Just to see the mural outside, to step inside and be like, great, I've made it to Los Angeles. This is the landmark. We've done it now.
That means the world to me. Thank you.
Man. Yeah, the reason I can do eyeliner, the reason I have Dan Smith's tattoos on my arm, and here we are all together now. So
I love it. And
honored.
I love that you guys are doing big things too, which is amazing.
Thank you.
All together, here we are.
Yeah.
We're so thrilled about having you on because, quite honestly, your aesthetic is something that both Tori and myself have always been captivated by. Your outfits were so unique, still are, and the makeup is always stunning, leaving us both as teenagers to look in the mirror being like, if Kat can do this winged liner, I can do it. And here we are today with all of us banging eyeliner, everybody. But the wonderful thing is, and I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to ask this first question, because I think it will help many of our listeners and potentially even Tori and myself. What would you say is the best makeup tip you have ever learned?
That's actually kind of a difficult question. I mean, there's obviously a lot of technical tips that, people can go on YouTube and find out how to do something. But I think ultimately for me, it's always been like a sense of inner confidence that exudes through whatever makeup that you do. I don't think that makeup is necessarily, at least for me, it's not about like transforming yourself into something that you're not. It's more about, it was just a form of self-expression for me. And that was kind of the message that I always wanted to do through my makeup, is that, it doesn't matter how you do it. It's just, as long as you're in tune with who you really are. So, I know it sounds a little bit cheesy and a little bit like, cliche, but I think that that's the truth. Nowadays, I see a lot of people really just emulating, and I think it's important to, it's a great thing to be inspired, but I think when you start warping like your intentions on like why you want to look a certain way, is it because, someone else looks that way and I want to be like them, or is it just because this is how I feel on the inside? I think there's a big difference, and I would choose the latter.
Yeah. Do you feel like when you look back, sorry, Alicia, but if you look back at your previous makeup looks, because you've evolved so much over the years, do you like see them as almost landmarks of this is who I was and this was the internal coming out in the different looks over the years?
Oh yeah. And I mean, also too, it's all like, they're like landmarks or milestones of like how I learned. Because like there's some pictures that I look at, I'm like, oh my God, my eyebrows, who in the world would let me go outside like that?
We've all been there with the brows, trust me. I went through that like super skinny phase when I was a teenager, and I'm like, man, just let the bushes grow.
We've definitely all come a long way.
I always look so sweaty. Like I'm like, what was I doing with my skin back then?
So pressed powder is what we're saying here. Not a bad idea.
That's the tip.
And a healthy brow.
Yeah.
Amazing. And of course, we've gone through the insane amount of accolades that you have, all of the different industries that you've dabbled in. I think one of the reasons we were really keen to talk to you today is because you're just an incredible businesswoman all around. You've done so much. And as someone who's witnessed tattooing, beauty, fashion, now book publishing, which we'll get into in a bit, and of course the music industry, which we love here on Knotfest, you've witnessed them change for 2 decades, give or take. So when you think back as somebody who's really seen it firsthand, how do you feel that we've evolved and changed as far as equity towards women, respect towards women, and just growth opportunity in these creative fields?
Yeah, I think that I mean, well, each of them are kind of different. Some are more female and male dominated than others, but I think more importantly, women have come to their own conclusion that they can do things that maybe a decade ago or a couple decades ago weren't considered the norm. Do you know what I mean? Like when I first started tattooing, there just wasn't any other female tattooers. I mean, there was, I think, 3 that were actually, included in a lot of the tattoo magazines and such. But in general,
Wasn't
but
that sweet?
yeah,
That was very nice.
A little good morning kiss. But I think it wasn't because people were macho and not accepting of women. It's just that I don't think women were like even entertaining the idea of becoming tattooers. And I think nowadays it's like the field is open, and there's not that many labor fields that women aren't really welcome in. It's just a matter of what we want to do. And I think that's exciting. I feel like obviously women are amazing and talented, and to bring that femininity into an industry that isn't known for that is like a really beautiful thing. And now when you look at tattooing, it's just like it would be weird if you didn't have female tattooers.
Right. Now we've seen that progression where it's this beautiful melting pot where you walk into
Yeah.
a studio and you just see the who's who of everybody. Because if you have a passion, regardless of gender, age, any of that bullshit,
Yeah.
like you just go after what you love now. And that's so cool
Yeah.
seeing that turn. And a lot of people seeing you thinking, okay, she's doing this, time to get in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I mean, I think if you have the willingness to put in the work, because that's the other side of it. I remember when I was tattooing, when I was first getting into the tattoo industry, a lot of people just assumed I was somebody's girlfriend, or if I got a write-up in a tattoo magazine, they just assumed, oh, it's because of her looks, and they kind of would not really think to look at what I do. And then there's something very satisfying about working really hard and being great at something, and then people acknowledging that. I think that's letting your work speak for itself. I never want to get hired because I'm a girl.
Yeah.
I want to get hired because I'm good at what I do and I have good character.
Because you're a woman with those qualities.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to have been a big theme across the board, because this whole podcast is about women empowerment and like, okay, well, what is the best example of how to get into these fields? And it's really just letting your work speak for itself. So
Yeah.
right on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And you've definitely been a trailblazer too, just to add, like, I know when I was younger thinking about getting tattoos, I was like, but I'm going to walk in this tattoo shop and I'm going to be so just like macho man everywhere and would be terrified to walk in. And I think even from the perspective of people getting tattoos, you seem to have made it more approachable, which is awesome to see.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And here on Knotfest, we are a music-focused publication among many other things. And we've loved seeing your music taste over the years. You're a musician with a classical background, and yet you also love Depeche Mode, The Cure, 2 of my favorites as well. And you just did that cover of The Cure's love song in Espanol, which was great. And we do cover quite a bit of heavy music on here. So I've been dying to ask if you have any just deep cut, unsuspecting rock and metal artists that you're really loving that we'd be surprised to know about.
Yeah, I mean, I come from like a metal background, first and foremost. Like that was kind of my introduction into music as a teenager. And so that's really a big place where my heart lies. And even though I don't make metal music, it doesn't mean that it's not in the foreground of what I love. But yeah, I think once I discovered like post-punk stuff, like how you mentioned, I love Susie and the Banshees and Depeche Mode and The Cure and all that. I think that's really where it felt like I wanted to be musically. And yeah, but we're working on a second album right now, and I think people will be excited to see some of the collabs that are on the album as well. Like Actually yesterday, my good friend Alicia from Arch Enemy was just over here at the house, and
Awesome.
we're getting ready to have her sing on one of the songs that we wrote for this next album. So you know, I'd like to marry both of the worlds because I love metal so much, but I do love like electronic music. So yeah, and it's funny because most of my metalhead friends love electronic music as well. You might not think that, but yeah.
I think it's becoming more cool, isn't it, to dabble in different genres where you don't just have to strictly love metal and then to just have too much pride to love the other stuff too.
Yes.
So that's really cool.
Well, I think especially like in the synthwave world, there's like this surgence of like dark wave, and I think the sound palette is more sinister and menacing, and so
Gloomy.
yeah, and I think that's what I'm attracted to. Like I don't
Mhm.
I've never been a fan of happy music, so I don't even know how to write that kind of stuff. But yeah, angry and melancholy is pretty good for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Something that I think a lot of people have enjoyed over the years as well is, yes, you are this TV star and this music personality, and a lot of people who have all these accolades sometimes do come off a little unapproachable, but every time you're sharing something, it's always very vulnerable and open. I think that's why people can relate to you so easily. And you shared this, of course, you shared this fantastic post about your full leg blackout tattoo, and it's this new sleek cover up tat you had done to ridden, as you said, the drunken tattoos that you had all over your leg before you became sober, and now you are 15 years sober. Just fucking inspirational in itself. Like, congratulations.
Thank you.
And as a strong female in the public eye, it's so important to have that confidence for so many reasons and just be confident in your skin. And now you are, which is beautiful. So tell us about that process of the blackout tattoo and the underlying positive, just self-esteem that's kind of come with it.
Well, yeah, you know, I think I'm glad you brought up my sobriety because I love talking about that. That's something I've always been quite open about, and especially when we were filming the TV show, because I was getting sober on while we were filming. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, like, maybe I should keep this to myself. And but I thought, like, what a lonely process it was for me to get sober. I didn't really have, you know, a big support group or anything. Most of my friends were partying and stuff. So I actually ended up losing a lot of friends once I decided to become sober. And so it was quite a lonely road. And I thought, well, like if I share this with the world, maybe it'll help people feel less alone in a way. And so I'm always very proud of talking about my sobriety. It's actually like my sober birthday or anniversary. I celebrate even more than my actual birthday. And because I think it's like, if it wasn't for my sobriety, I wouldn't be alive. So it's a good thing. But yeah, I back to what you were saying, I think it's important to be real and open. And some people think I overshare at times, and that's okay. I just don't really know any other way to be. And as far as like how I, you know, want to interact with my followers and fans, is that like I want to be able to be transparent and be myself even when I make mistakes, because that's part of being human. And you know, there's some people that will like me and some people that won't, and that's okay, you know. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
That's something we've learned over the years too. You're going to get so many nasty comments, but then you get those ones where people just support what you're doing and actually care behind the scenes. Those are the only ones that matter ever.
Well, you know, I think those are your real fans, not because they're saying nice things, but I think it's like your real fans will like love you throughout your journey. You know, it's not really a question of whether you say things the way they like you to say them, you know.
Absolutely.
I've always been a fan of people as for who they are, you know, whether I agree with them or not.
Yeah. And I think that's been the magic too of, you know, especially having followed your career for such a long time, is that you've grown, you've changed, and so have we. So it's kind of like your fan base in a way has grown with you and evolved alongside you.
Yeah, totally. And especially after being a mom, you know, I think it's like becoming a mom. I feel like that was something that I never planned on doing. I never thought I would be a mom. I never thought I'd fall in love and get married, and here I am, you know, and it's the best thing on the planet. But it's not like I don't feel that I'm like necessarily defined by that either. You know, I like still being myself outside of my marriage, outside of being a mother, but I'm all those things at once. And so I think that's a good thing. And it kind of shows other people, like, you know, I was talking to my synth player, Sammy Doll, like she just recently became a mom as well. And before you have a kid, you're like, oh my God, am I going to be able to tour? Am I going to be able to to create and all this stuff after I have a kid? And you realize that, like, if anything, you're more creatively charged, and it's just more exciting. I get to take my son on tour with me, and like, I think that's the coolest gift I could give him. And, it's a wonderful thing.
It's just
Wow.
nonstop inspiration, isn't it?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I don't
mean,
plan on writing any songs about my kid, because I don't write those kind of songs, but like,
You write the sad songs, right? And he brings you
yeah.
brings you happiness.
and who
Yeah.
needs to write kids songs when you could write a
No.
kid's book? Am I right?
Yeah. That's
Which
right.
very nicely leads me to my next question. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Because you are releasing your children's book, Leofar and the Magical Treasure Chest, which I've seen some of the illustrations and some of the pages, and it is so magical. Like what
It's
you're saying,
adorable.
that it is a totally different kind of creativity when you have a kid, because they're just so pure and just so
Yeah.
excited about the world for the first time. And you were quoted as saying as well that when you were a kid, that you remember reading kids' books and really being impacted by the artwork more so than the story itself as a kid, which is so great that you worked with Kevin Llewellyn on your artwork, because he did
Yeah,
such
he's
a great
amazing.
job on that collaboration. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you too, if there's any specific childhood art or books that really stuck with you through into your adulthood, and if you drew back some of those memories while creating this book and how that impacted your decision.
Yeah, I mean, I was like a sucker for all the classics, obviously, like Where the Wild Things Are, The Hungry Caterpillar, all that stuff. But I think,
Yes.
when I look at more detailed, like fully rendered children's books, those are the ones that really spoke to me, because as you said, it's like, I don't remember when I started reading. I'm assuming it was like in first grade or something. But like prior to that, I just was left with my imagination, and that's kind of what I wanted to do with this book. Where, of course, as a parent, you can read the story to your child, but they can get lost in the images. And that's kind of how Leofar and I like to read. Like when we read a book, it's not necessarily that he's actually reading, because he's only 4 years old, but like he's just getting lost in the artwork and through his imagination. And so yeah, I teamed up with Kevin Llewellyn because he's a fine artist. So I've been a huge fan of his for a long time. I've collected a lot of his paintings. And although he does more like macabre, darker subject matters in his own artwork, I felt like he's like, if you ever meet him, he's like the biggest kid at heart. And so when I asked him to do this, he was just like, oh my gosh, this sounds like so much fun. And it was like a way for us to express ourselves like through the eyes of a child. And so that was actually really satisfying, because most of the time if I'm designing a tattoo, or if I'm drawing a charcoal rendering of a portrait or something, it's like the stakes are higher in a different way, like there's a certain expectation. Whereas this, it's like you're just free. You're free to like paint pictures, or a message through artwork and through visualization. So that was exciting for me. And yeah, and also I think, I've been, like I said, working on the second album. So I've been in songwriting mode. So when I was actually writing the book, it was like, oh, this is so much easier. Like what rhymes with bat? Like I don't have to like figure out how to make something so profound, and that was cool. But the story itself was inspired by my son. Like we would have our bedtime routine, and I would always like think of stories that were very long-winded, that were just like repetitive over and over, so he could fall asleep. So the idea of this like magical treasure chest, where when it opens up, he jumps in and he comes out a different animal, and then through his own imagination, he like starts interacting with these animals. Like when he turns into a bat, he starts flying through the sky with all his bat friends. And so I would do that over and over again, and it's like he'd go back in, and I'd be like, all right, what animal are we going to be now? And, we'd go through the gamut, and until he would be so tired, he'd fall asleep. And I was like, I'm going to make this into an actual book. And that's how Leofar and the Magical Treasure Chest came to be.
Wow, that is so awesome. And such an interesting point that I hadn't thought of prior to the interview. Like your work and just general aesthetic is so much darker and heavier than what we're seeing with this book. Like what a sigh of relief to come into this, and now you have a kid's book.
Crazy juxtaposition too.
Yeah, but it's still like, it's good for spooky kids. My son is like a spooky kid. He like loves like Hotel Transylvania, and he like kind of gravitates towards stuff that he like sees within his own family, you know, like, and so for him, like he likes spiders and, you know, and snakes and whatever it is, like it's very interesting to him. And so like with that being said, I thought it would be cool to include a tattoo page at the end of the book. And that way, like, you know, when you're done reading the book, you could, you know, your kid could put on little temporary tattoos of Leofar and animals and, you know, really kind of tie everything together.
It's insanely clever to just bring those roots into something so new and such a fresh venture that you're doing. Very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I know that we had sort of touched on this a little bit earlier about just, you know, being so vulnerable online and who your supporters are versus other people having things to say. And I think it's rare that we get to talk to somebody on this podcast that has really had just a presence in the public eye at the level that you have. And so I think it would be just interesting to ask you this question, because every creative industry comes with the loud opinions, the influencers, the reviewers, the bystanders, and they all just have so much to say. So out of every industry you've worked in, which one would you say has the harshest critics? And how do you maintain your freedom and of expression amidst that?
I mean, I think they all come with their own brand of haters, I guess. But
for
I
better
think,
or for worse.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. Like we just released that cover of the Cure's love song, and I wanted to do, you know, a very big departure from the original, because I feel like sometimes people try and redo an already perfect song, and I think that The Cure writes perfect songs, and it's like we're not trying to do it better, we're just trying to tell it in a different light, right? And so I thought, hey, let's do like this very synth driven, like arcade music version of the song, but we'll do it in Spanish. And you know, I thought it was interesting and fun. And from my side, it's like, oh my God, people loved it. They were like, especially, you know, I was born in Mexico and my family's from South America. So my Latin background is like a big part of who I am. And so I thought it was like a really cool way of paying homage to my roots by doing it in Spanish. And so people loved it, right? And then this last week, we saw like a fan club of The Cure repost the video. Yeah. And I was like, you know, I've never seen so many negative comments.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my, it was like just the most hateful, a lot of like trash can emojis, a lot of vomiting emojis.
Jeez. I love how you're laughing at it though. Like that is when you know you have zero fucks to give. You're doing what you love.
Well, you know, I went back to my band and I was like, you know, I thought they would like it because, you know, I love The Cure so much and they would say that I'm the biggest fan, you know? And my bandmate Greg was like, oh no, you know, it's just that people are, I think they get very protective, especially the fan clubs. And they just want to see Robert Smith, you know? And I was like, you know what? You're right. I only want to see Robert Smith too. But at the same time, I do like it when there's interesting takes on covers, you know? I think that's cool.
Yeah. Do you think if you would tease your hair a little bit that maybe this would have gone over better? Like if
you just
really
stole
gone for it?
No, the only way I would have won is if I was Robert Smith. That's it.
Oh man, Tori, you like stole that thought right out of my mind. I kid you not.
There was an attempt.
So good.
But no, totally fair. Music gatekeeping is a thing and it's scary, but the fact that you can laugh at it and still be confident in your work, you know what? Maybe that is a huge key to success as well. Is like if you know what you're doing is fun and there's people out there who are supporting it, you win. Yeah,
exactly. And you know what? You also like I said, not everybody's gonna like what you do, and I think that's totally fine. You know, there's a lot of I feel like I'm quite closed-minded when it comes to music. Like I love what I love, and I don't really want to hear anything else. You know, and so it's like I get it. You know, it's like it's cool. And but there's something for everybody.
Right. I feel like the biggest difference is you're not going out of your way to trash the stuff you don't like, and that's kind of the fine line.
No, I would never. Yeah.
No. Well, there is a quote that we have here, one that we loved taken from your bio. And the quote is, "Her passion and individuality are rich with values that set an example for the next generation of leaders. Whether looking through a lens of business, creativity, determination, empathy, or parenting, Kat Von D has left a legacy that resonates across multiple cultures and industries." And with that quote, it truly encapsulates why we really wanted to chat with you and have you on this specific show. So what do you think are kind of the most powerful attributes that every successful businesswoman and even artist out there should possess in order to stand out and thrive in these competitive industries? Because every single one that all of us have really been a part in are so cutthroat.
Yeah, you're right. And well, I think like for me, what seems to work with me is just having a certain like being in tune with your intentions. You know, I think like whenever I think about why I get into any project, like what is the intention behind it? And if it's, you know, if you're just looking to get like rich and famous and get a bunch of followers, and stuff, that's going to be like a bottomless void that you'll never fulfill. And the way I see it is like, I just do everything from the standpoint of a fan, you know, like I want to create things that I want to see, that I want to hear, that I want to feel. And because, you know, at the end of the day, I'm the person that actually goes out and buys the ticket to go see a band play. I buy the t-shirt, you know, I buy the makeup, whatever it is. And so I think when you're making things out of love of whatever that is, that's the most important part. And I think that that's what resonates with people, because I think that like corporations in general, they really get it wrong in the sense that they think people are stupid. Like, you know, hey, they'll just fall for this marketing campaign. And it's like, I think people are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. At least my fans, like, I think my fans are smart enough to know when something is forced or something is just, you're doing something just for the sake of money, or, you know, trying to shove something down somebody's throat. And I like to think that people can think for themselves. So yeah, that would be my, you know, my kind of vague advice. I suck at advice.
So bottom line, just be genuine with everything that you do, and fingers crossed, all roads will lead to whatever you kind of hope they do.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot more to it. You got to work hard and all
that. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. But girls, I'm so excited for you guys. You guys are doing amazing things, and I feel like so lucky to be here talking to you. And I just want to say thanks for having me.
Thank you. That's so lovely.
And
we really
likewise,
appreciate that.
Cool. Awesome.
Can you tell we're blushing, everybody?
Or is that just my KVD beauty blush? Who's to say? But I digress. We do want to wrap up this interview with a segment that we have reoccurring on every episode called our most jaw-dropping segment, where we ask you a few questions about your most jaw-dropping stories.
Okay.
So the first one here is, what is the most jaw-dropping experience you've ever had at a live show? Could be yours, could be one you've been to. It's up to you.
I think like for me, my favorite band to see play live is the Mars Volta. And
yes.
And and I remember the first time I went and saw them, and you know, they've become good friends of mine over the years. But like I just remember it was like a 2-hour set and no openers, and I just had to stand the entire time. Like it was just nonstop, just bliss from within, like the entire time. And I just think like as a band, they tick all the boxes for me, like technically, you know, lyrically, and then like live wise, I feel like there's so much showmanship on all, like across the board. And that's something that I feel like is like tends to be lacking nowadays. You know, there's a lot of people that just go up there and just like stand at a mic and sing in a cardigan. And I'm just like, I can't be bothered with that.
I love the addition of in a cardigan. I can see it. It's like, give me some showmanship, please.
I could see like some toms in there as well. Like, I don't know, I could see the whole bit.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, next up, what would you say is the most jaw-dropping misstep which took place earlier in your career, and what lesson did you learn from that?
I'm kind of from the school of thought that like everything kind of happens the way it's supposed to happen. But I think misstep, I don't know. I mean, I've made some really terrible choices in people I've dated, but who hasn't, right?
I was going to say, haven't we all?
Yeah, and I feel like, that's what makes us who we are now. And I always like look back and say, like, if I hadn't made those poor decisions, I wouldn't have met my husband. And so I can't say it was a misstep, right?
Right. Totally
Fair
fair.
You definitely
Yeah.
learned what you didn't like so you could find what you did
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
As us ladies know very well.
Oh, yes.
And the next one we have here is the most jaw-dropping female artist that you would love to work with.
Well, I mean, I'm like the biggest Susie and the Banshees fan, but I had heard that she wasn't going to be performing much, so I don't know if she plans on it, but I mean, I don't think I could flatter myself to think that I could work with her, but that would be amazing to even just be in the same room.
I mean, we're manifesting. We're putting
Yes,
it out
putting it
there
into
now.
the universe.
I mean, I'm just happy being able to be her fan and listen to her music.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed on that one.
Same. Then for our last one, what would you say is the most jaw-dropping misconception about you that you wish people truly understood?
I think that I look a lot more villainous than I am. I think if for anybody that spends any amount of time with me, they realize I'm just like a big softie and quite nerdy. So I think that's probably a big misconception.
We love that. It's true. So many people do judge a book directly by its cover, and there's so many layers to all of us. And I'm so glad that today we were able to, pull those layers back with you a little bit. So
I love
thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys too.
Yeah, well, Kat, it has been such an honor to be able to chat with you. Thank you so much for your time. Everybody watching, make sure you give lots of love to her cover of The Cure's Love Song if you haven't already. And make sure you check out her book as well. And stay tuned for more here on Knotfest with She's with the Band. I've been Tori Kravitz with my co-host Alicia Atout, and we'll catch you next time. Bye, y'all.
Bye.